Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up. Happy holidays, happy new year, and adios to 2024. It is our year in review show. Today, we're going to forego the informalities and banner and guest interview and recap one hell of a year in 2024. By the time you hear this, it will be 2025. So it's kind of a combination of, recapping 2024 and saying hello and celebrating 2025 being here. And we would have done this last year, but we were only in existence for 3 months. I think we had like 6 episodes at that point. Right. So we didn't do that. So, there you go.
Yeah. Well, 2024 was our first full calendar year as a show. So that makes us about 15 months old now?
About that. Yeah. We started in September of 2023. So 15, 16 months of shows. This is, I think, technically episode 36. And we publish every other week. So I think the math works out there. We may have skipped a week or somewhere in there, somewhere too, but there you go.
Well, as anyone who knows me knows that I don't math, so I'll just take whatever you say as truth. But yeah, 2024 was a big year for the show, and it was a really good year for me personally, at least from the music perspective. I think I can accurately say 2024 was a phenomenal year for you, Mr. 150 concerts.
Yeah, unquestionably the most music, the most concerts, the most records, the most fun talking about music that I've had in any one year. I think I've shared the ridiculous number of artist sets I saw in 2024, just for the record, because I'm the kind of dork who keeps track. In the calendar year 2024, I saw 112 different sets from 105 different artists. Now, that includes 3 music festivals and several local shows at places like the Modern Music Community where there's 2 or 3 performers in a given night. But yeah, that's a lot.
That is. And now here comes the math again. Okay, so that means that you saw 7 people or acts more than once.
Yes. I saw Marcus King 4 times this year, including just over New Year's, the weekend right before New Year's. Tyler Childers, Joy Aladakun, Jason Isbell, the 400 Unit, Brent Cobb, Leon Meitzen, who was on the show, and my pals at Digby, who were also on the show. I saw all of those twice, but Marcus King was 4 times this year. Actually, you know what? I think there's another one in there too. S.G. Goodman I saw twice this year. So that she's in there. And then technically I saw Patterson Hood twice too, but I saw him solo and then once with the Drive-By Truckers. So I would count those as separate artists. So I would, I count those separately, even though I saw him twice.
I guess that's fair. And you mentioned S.G. Goodman, also a friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, so then what we also learned in 2024 is that Falls is a dork.
That's fair. That's totally fair. It's the old sports stats nut in me. I keep tallies on things for no apparent reason. I'm not OCD about much, but for some reason I like to keep track of stuff. So there you go.
Well, I don't begrudge you for that. In fact, I wish I kept better track so I could, I know who I saw and when and how many times, but maybe that'll be my music resolution for 2025.
There you go. We can both keep tally. At any rate, welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And we'll ramble on through the stories behind the music we love.
Today on the show, we are going to review 2024. We'll share our favorite albums, songs, and artists this year. So we talked about our top live shows a couple episodes ago. So we'll also give a nod to our own version of Entertainer of the Year, Artist of the Year, and more.
Yeah, and there's so much great music to choose from. 2024 was indeed a banner year for Americana and Roots music. We started the year with Sierra Ferrell's explosion. We had crazy stories this year, like Jason Isbell and Amanda Shires announcing their divorce. We had an inordinate amount of amazing collaborations launched. Some of them didn't include Noah Kahan, but most of them did. There was a lot, and Noah had half of them anyway.
So we wanted to put a bow on 2024 and run down our favorites. So let's get it started, shall we? I want to talk about the top songs of the year first. There were so many good ones to consider, but I'm going to kick off our review with my top 10 songs of 2024, if that's okay with you, Mr. Falls.
I'm can't wait. Let's do it.
All right. So initially when I compiled this list, I tried to do it like in order of, like my favorite to 10th favorite. I don't know if it quite will set that way, but so I'll just read the ones that I have come up with, okay? So, my favorite songs of 2024. I have Until We Meet Again by Hermanos Gutierrez, Without Warning by the Nets, their Chicago local band. Without You, Ella Salter and the Sunday Sinners, and Ella and her band are friends of the show. A new single from Sarah Jean Stevens called Thaw that was just released in December, I do believe, early December, I'm sorry. And it is really beautiful. And again, Sarah Jean is a friend of the show. Coming in next, I have Hello Sunshine by John Mook, Escanaba by Billy Strings, which is interestingly enough, an instrumental song, just like Until We Meet Again by Hermanos Gutierrez. I've not been known to really, get excited about instrumental only songs, but those two are, they're just awesome. So then Hunt You Down by Caitlin Butts, that is a jam. Lone Star Lake by Waxahachie. Rotations from Adeem the Artist, and Lighthouse by Sierra Ferrell.
Wow. That's an impressive list. I'm taking notes here.
Okay, good.
I can go back and listen to the recording, obviously, but I'm kind of taking notes because I'm like, wow, this is really good stuff. And some of these, a couple of these songs I haven't even heard.
Yeah.
So I think what that tells me is my list is going to be much more of someone who follows the top 40 charts in the
Okay.
different genres, because you've got some deep cuts from some very specific artists. The one, the Nets are a band that I probably wouldn't have heard had it not been, or not heard of even, if had it not been for you. Mine's a little bit more not mainstream. It's not a bunch of Morgan Wallen songs. It's my songs are much more Americana chart toppers, or stuff that would have been played frequently commercially as well. I
Okay.
think, but so just out of comparison. So I'll go ahead and these are my top songs, my top singles of the year. And I did put them in order. And I probably shouldn't have, because you could shuffle the deck here and any one of them would be fantastic. But I think my favorite song this year by far, in a lot of ways, was Hero by Marcus King. Um, I love Marcus King. I saw him 4 times live this year. I love that song. And I love all of his work. So it was hard for him not to be on the list. And it was difficult for me not to put 2 or 3 Marcus King songs on the list. I do have at least one artist with 2 songs on this list, but it's not Marcus King. So
Oh,
everyone can probably guess who it is. But
I think I know.
the number 2 song that I put, and this is a little bit more of me kind of caving into other people's pressure. I like the song. I don't think it's the best song on the album for my personal tastes, but when you take all of the attention and the success and the meaning behind it, American Dreaming by Sierra Ferrell has to be amongst your top 5, I think, if you're, paying attention to the broader, kind of commercial market and all that good stuff. So I've got her at number 2. Questions, Chaos, and Faith by Joy Oladakoon is my 3rd on my list. I love that song. It was one of the first singles off of her new album. So it was, released a few months before the full album was. Observations from a Crowded Room, I think. And I just love that song. Number 4, and this one took me a little bit of consideration because it has kind of faded out a little bit. It was more of an early of the year song, but it was so big when it came out that it had to be in my top 5, and that's $10 Cowboy by Charlie Crockett. Just kind of redefined and helped him explode a little bit bigger than he already had. And definitely an identifiable phrase for a lot of people, thanks to him. Mint Tea by Johnny Blue Skies, a.k.a. Sturgill Simpson's, my number 5. I've also got a Billy Strings song on the list, and then this is a latecomer, Gild the Lily, his latest single. I think is just really good, and I just love it, and it sounds good. It's a little slow for him, kind of a, it's not necessarily your, mainstream bluegrass fast picking kind of sound, which is normally Billy Strings. But it's just a really sweet song. I really like it a lot. Bon Iver, Speyside, I think his latest single that's out. It's been played a lot on FPK and has become an earworm for me. So that's my number
Okay.
7. Um, Number 8 is Empty Trainload of Sky, Gillian, Welch, and David Rawlings, who I had the honor of seeing live this year. That was one of the artists I saw, and just fantastic. Watching David Rawlings play guitar live or on video is an experience because he just plays it very differently than other people. But hearing what comes out of the guitar is fantastic, and so I love that song. I also have a Waxahachie tune on here. Right back to it, Waxahachie featuring
Oh
MJ
yeah.
Linderman. Love the collaboration there between those two, and that song's on my list. And my number 10 is I'd Miss the Birds, Joy Lottacoon. So she's got 2
Mm,
entries on my list. But I'd Miss the Birds is, I love the song because it's this sort of lamentation of not feeling like she belongs,
okay.
in a town where she should. And I that's one of the reasons why I identify with her music a lot is I always feel like a little out of place, and I think her music expresses that, sort of not belonging kind of feeling a lot. So those are my top 10. So again, mine are much more of the mainstream radio friendly, not mainstream country, but Americana friendly artists. Yours are a little bit more granular and deep cuts and whatnot, which goes to show you why you know more about this shit than I do. So.
I don't know about that, but no, and I agree with you about American Dreaming from Sierra Ferrell. It is a beautiful song, and it just my, I guess, attitude towards like popular mainstream, as you say, is that sometimes the most popular songs to me aren't the best. And you even mentioned that. So um that's why I didn't include it, and I really like the song Lighthouse. The first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh," like, I felt it, and to me, um, that is more important than popularity according to other people. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Am I explaining that
Yeah.
like,
No, that makes
I
sense.
feel like I'm okay. Alright, so, yeah, and, not to take away from that song because it is beautiful, but your list, I'm not surprised by any of your picks, especially with Marcus King and Joy Aladakun, but, yeah, that's great, and, like you said, some of that stuff I haven't even heard yet,
Yeah.
so, I should be taking notes too.
Well, and that's what we say about such great music. I mean, these are our opinions, and there's 100 songs that could have been on either one of these lists, maybe more.
Yeah,
And that's the beautiful thing about music is if you're ranking your top 10 lists, it's going to be very different than mine because music can mean a lot of different things and sound a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. So it's
exactly.
fantastic. I mean, somebody out there somewhere thinks Yoko Ono sounds great. Somebody, I don't know who, but you know,
I don't know who.
I don't either, but whatever. I was actually, this is totally freaking weird. I was watching a documentary the other day and she and John were in it during that, era where they were doing the Yoko Ono, John Lennon string band or whatever it's called. Um, and I thought, man, if I could, that'd be nice to interview her. Let's get her on Roots
Mm,
Music Rambler because this genuinely roots music. I mean, her roots are very different than what we think of. I mean, she's
yeah,
obviously Japanese but her music, I think, was also much more of almost like theatrical art than it was music.
okay.
As I recall, most of her songs were just her screaming. But I would love to have a conversation with her at some point and say, for someone who hears that and doesn't think it sounds good, can you explain that art to me so that I can get my head wrapped around what you're trying to convey there? I'd love to ask her that question. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance, but
Yeah,
you know, who knows?
maybe.
Maybe. Anyway, so these lists are our opinions more than anything else. So you could literally add hundreds of songs to these lists and shuffle the deck, and any are deserving. But let's go to break with one of Frank's songs. It's from a friend of the show. We'll come back with a little bit of one of mine. But when we do come back after the break, we're going to go over our top albums of 2024. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler. We're going to go out with Without You from Ellis Alter and the Sunday Sinners.
I'm not the settling down kind. I'm a wild and restless soul, looking for adventure and a life that makes me whole. Took a lot of roads to get here, but the journey's just begun. Time for me to start living and looking out for number one. No more hiding in the shadows, no chasing red tail lights, no more dancing with the devil just to make it through the night. Gotta chase those sunsets before my time is through. This is me without you, living life in the sunshine, and it's a brand new day. Your soft green eyes never told me any lies, but your lips have turned me round time or two. Tried to prove that you were wrong, but you told me all along that you were looking for a hero. You done your time with figures made of stone, but I let you run wild. But I see you smile, it's all I need. And I let you run wild. I know that's your style, it's all I need. Your hometown, everybody let you down.
Marcus King and Hero from his 2024 album Mood Swings. That was my number one song of 2024. The song that took us to break was one of Frank's. That was called Without You from Elle Salter and the Sunday Sinners. She is a friend of the show, which, by the way, stick around toward the end of the episode. We're going to give you a little rundown of friends of the show, guests that we've had and what they're up to these days. We've got an update on Ella and the Sunday Sinners as well. So that brings us to our next list on this 2024 year in review and Hello 2025 episode of Roots Music Rambler. And that is albums. Now, 2024 was just chock full of amazing albums. Sarah Jaraz kicked everything off. I think her album came out in January. We had Charlie Crockett, Waxahachie, Secret Sisters, Joya Loticoon, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, 49 Winchester, the Avett Brothers, Wyatt Flores, Hozier, John Moreland. I mean, we could do this all day and mention some great artists who released great albums in 2024.
And we each thought a handful really stood out as our albums of the year. And for me, I judged mine by first and foremost what I've actually listened to. So as Jason mentioned, there were so many new albums this year. And as a busy mom who works and does this podcast, and, it just life, and I know I've said that before, I haven't been able to spend enough time to listen to all of the albums and really, really listen to them like more than once in order to form a fair opinion. So those kinds of albums like John Moreland's, I haven't given it the time and the listens that it deserves. So it's not that I'm snubbing John Moreland. It's just I wouldn't be able to give an opinion on it.
Right.
Okay. So, and I just want to emphasize that by saying our list, whatever we've chosen, we're not critics. It's not exhaustive by any means. It's just what spoke to us this year.
Yep.
So
Very true.
how did you choose your list?
So I listed out mainly the albums that I bought that were new this year, but I also I considered the ones that I kind of played over and over again because that's going to be these are my personal favorites. But then I also did some searching for other people's top album lists to see if there was something out there that I should have on mine that I didn't. So, for instance, I mentioned Bon Iver in the last section of the show. He's got a new one out. I've heard a couple of songs off of it, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. So I wanted to consider all those as well. After I did all that, I kind of went through and ranked the albums as if I were saying, which of these albums am I most likely to keep playing over and over? So they have kind of a timelessness element to me.
Yeah, makes sense. So I went first for the songs list. So why don't you go over your top 10 albums of 2024 first?
All right. Now this won't cause controversy because nobody cares other than me. But in my internal brain, my brain is telling me this is controversial because my number one album this year, taking all things into consideration, an album that I know I'm going to play over and over again, that I know was a big album commercially. It introduced a lot of people to a new artist that they hadn't heard before, and is someone who I think we're going to look back on this album and say that was the album that made her big, and that's Trail of Flowers, Sierra Ferrell. It's hard to not rank that thing as an album, the best album of the year. It's probably going to win all those awards. It's already won a couple. And I think it will continue to do so because top to bottom, song to song, it's really just well done. And it certainly presented the country music space, the Americana space, the Roots music space even, with a very different flavor of artist and song and performer. And so I ranked that one number one, slightly ahead of Mood Swings by Marcus King, which was by far my favorite, like, personal album that I know I'm going to just cherish that album. So I took more than just my own personal opinion into consideration here, obviously. But I've got Marcus King, Mood Swings second. Made by These Moments, Red Clay Strays third. Their second album was fantastic, as good, if not better than the first. I can't wait to hear whatever they come up with next because it's going to be probably freaking great. And that's a band I think we're going to be talking about for a long time. Number 4 on my list was Passages du Désir, Johnny Blue Skies, Sturgill Simpson. Again, everything that guy puts out is amazing, I think. I even like the Sound and Fury album that nobody liked other than me, but
I love that album.
yeah, it's hard, it's loud, but it's Sturgill. And so it's fantastic. Number 5 might be a little surprise for some people is to be number 5 on my list and not higher is Observations from a Crowded Room. Joy Lottacoon, her new album came out, I believe, in October, November. And I just love it. I love everything she does, but the album is fantastic. And I think she played all the instruments on it. And it's just a complete, offering from her. And I love it. So it's fantastic. Number 6 is an album that hadn't been out that long, but I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite artists ever, and that's Brighter Days by Dwight Yoakam. Hard to have that not on the list. It's a big album with a lot of great banging songs on it. If you haven't heard it yet, you got to go get it. Check it out. If you like Dwight at all, you'll love this album. And the debut from his 4-year-old son, Dalton, on one of the songs is just fucking a cute little Easter egg. I love it. It's just so cool. Number 7 on my list is Charlie Crockett, $10 Cowboy. He also, had another album to follow up as kind of part 2 to $10 Cowboy, which is also very good. But $10 Cowboy's on there. South of here, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. I hadn't heard a lot of Nathaniel Rateliff before. I saw them live opening for Tyler Childers out at the Gorge in August. But man, I started digging into that album, and there's 4 or 5 songs on there that I just play over and over again. They're just so good. So that's got to be on my list. My number 9 album might raise an eyebrow or two. I'm putting Cowboy Carter on this list. I think Beyonce's album is really good. I think it is a different spin and a different take on what we call country. And it's one that I like. I love the blending of the genres, and I think she did an admirable job with it. And certainly she's faced a bunch of unnecessary fucking idiot criticism because she tried to, do a country album. I think it's great. I really like the album a lot. And when we're recording this, we're just coming off of her big halftime performance over the Christmas holiday at the Dallas Cowboys thing, where she did a Cowboy Carter concert basically for halftime. And it has a lot of people are saying that it was a fantastic halftime show. I didn't see it, but I read the reviews of it, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, Beyonce she put that flag down." I saw an article earlier today saying she's replaced Michael Jackson as the greatest entertainer of all time. Like, the girl knows what she's doing, and she's good
Yeah.
at it. And I don't see why people don't embrace this. I love the album. I bought it right when it came out, and I've listened to it 5 or 6 times since then. And it's different. Yeah. If you got to open your blinders a little bit if you're a big country music fan and say, okay, let's think about country a little bit broader here to really embrace it. But I like the album. So I've got it at number 9. And then number 10, this one snuck in there on me. I've only listened to it a few times through, but Highway Prayer, Billy Strings. I mean, it's one of those albums that I put it number 10 on my list because, like Sierra Ferrell or even Beyonce, kind of doing something that changes your perspective on an artist, I think Highway Prayer takes Billy Strings from being a prodigy bluegrass novelty to a big songwriter and big performer, because it's much more than just him playing guitar and mandolin and banjo really fast, right? It's really good songs, really good songwriting, really good production. It's a very, very good album. And I think it kind of changes his trajectory. So I think it's an important album for him, and that's why it made my list. So those are mine.
Excellent.
Frank,
Excellent.
what are yours?
Well, if I may
Yeah.
speak to a couple of your choices
Please do.
there. Nathaniel Rateliff, it's kind of funny. I first saw him in 2012 before the Night Sweats existed. And he was part of a festival that I attended, and I'd never heard of him. And I really, really liked what I heard. And so, like, I downloaded all of his stuff on iTunes at the time, and then listened to him for a long time, and then kind of just not forgot about him, but other things came up. And then all of a sudden, the song SOB comes out, and I hear Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, and I'm like, hold on, is this the same guy that I saw? you know? And so I'm like, oh my goodness, it is. And it completely different sound. If you listen to his earlier stuff without the Night Sweats, he's a completely different performer. So I still appreciate his music and his talent, and he does record and write some bangers. So, and then the thing about Beyonce, you said that, you don't understand why, or you can't figure out why it's getting, the album and Beyonce herself are getting such negative feedback from it. And you even kind of alluded to it yourself, is because it requires an open mind, okay, to appreciate it. And unfortunately, our country isn't at that point yet where they're, as a whole, we're able to do that. And I think a lot of it just stems from ignorance and not realizing that country music is far more steeped in African American history than, our white history, if you will. So there's that. And Billy Strings, I'll talk about him too, because a couple of your choices are also on my list. So I guess I'll start out with my number 1, and no surprise at all, it is the same that Jason picked, Trail of Flowers from Sierra Ferrell. And for the same reasons Jason stated, and it's just from, like he said, top to bottom, just an excellent album. And inevitably, even from my favorite artists like Sun Volt, Jason Isbell, there are albums of theirs that I skip over songs when I'm listening to the full album, right? Trail of Flowers, that does not happen. I don't skip over any of them. So that's, to me, that was a criteria that I used to rank it as number 1. Followed by Mind, Man, Medicine from the Secret Sisters. And I've talked about them before. You all should know by now that I just adore those gals, and they're so incredibly talented and just lovely humans. And I want all the success in the world for them. And then next is Anniversary from Adeem the Artist. And I thoroughly enjoyed Adeem's other albums. So this one kind of, it's right up there. And I would like to see Adeem experience some more commercial success. And hopefully we'll get to have them on the show in the near future, and we can talk more about it. But coming in next then is The Fear of Standing Still from American Aquarium. They're another band that whatever they put out is just, it's just going to be good. And BJ Barham is just such a delightful person. And Margot Silker even talked about him, how he's been sort of a mentor to her, and great storyteller. Just love them. And then number 5 is Tiger's Blood from Waxahachie. That's another one that I can listen to straight through without skipping anything. And next, kind of this one maybe is just snuck in, is Critterland, if you will, from Willie Carlisle. I was reminded of the album when I saw Willie at Evanston Folk Festival back in September. And so I gave it a listen again, and I was like, yep, this is a good one. So that's on there. And followed by Roadrunner from Caitlin Butts. We've talked about her a couple times. She was my pick in the Grinnin', I don't know, a couple months ago. And I really, really enjoy that album. And then I've got Highway Prayers from Billy Strings. And like Jason said, this is kind of the album that, I agree with what Jason said about it. And for me, it solidifies his position as a bona fide, performer, musician, songwriter. And the fact that he's got an instrumental song that I included on my top 10 list, to me that's impressive. But that song, I just want to get in the car, turn on the radio, windows down, just no matter the weather, and just play it. So that's number 8. And then number 9 is Sonido Cósmico by Hermanos Gutierrez. Again, love those guys. Talked about them enough. I don't really need to get too far into it again now.
That's the panty droppers. That's the panty droppers there.
The panty droppers, yes. Those swarthy, delightful young men. Anyway, yes. And then rounding it out is Flying Away from John Mook. And he's another guy I've talked about a bunch of times on the show. And he made quite an impression on me too at the Evanston Folk Festival. And that album is really good.
Very good. That's a hell of a list.
Have it.
And again, I think this, if I were to look at your list and my list, the difference I think really is that you go deep on certain artists, whereas I try to take in, kind of the popular list, the top 40s and all that kind of stuff. I try to keep a wide angle lens on the landscape. And so I'm going to be a little bit more, I guess, commercially viable or popular artists on my lists than maybe some of the ones that you are, because you drill in a little bit deeper. But I think that's what makes us co-hosting this show together fantastic, because we balance each other out pretty well.
Exactly.
You'll go deep. I'm a little bit more broad. So
there we go.
But that's good.
And perfect balance is what I was going to say.
Very good. All right. So again, we have the approach that music is not a competition. We do this more for conversation and recommend records to you that maybe you haven't given a full shot to thus far. We could both throw out our 10s and change them out with others, because you've still got albums that we talked about a lot on this show, like Old School from Kimmy Bitter. Amethyst Kia's new record is awesome. The Heavy Heavy's new record is great. Kate Pruitt's Mantras was really high on my list. Gillian, Welch, David Rawlings, Woodland is amazing. There's so many options here. It's very hard to narrow it down, and creativity is not a competition. So as many top 10 lists and best new and all this kind of stuff that you hear, it's all bullshit. It just gives you a reason to talk about stuff. And all of these artists are fantastic, and find the ones whose sound you like and whose songs you identify with, and they are your favorites. So there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Were there others in consideration for your list? You mentioned those from Kimmy Bitter, Amethyst Kia.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Any others that you would mention?
Oh, my goodness. Well, 49 Winchester, Leaving This Holler came out this year. And if you're a Southern rock enthusiast, that's got to be on your list, because 49 Winchester is just fantastic. Sarah Jarosz's Polaroid Lover is really good. There's 4 or 5 cuts off that I listen to in rotation. I mentioned Katie Pruitt, Mantras. Wyatt Flores, both of his albums came out in 2024. So, I mean, and both of them are very good. A friend of the show, Leon Meitzen, his first, full album, just called Leon Meitzen, came out this year. I like it a lot. And then if you think beyond like just what I like and the artists that I pay attention to, Oliver Anthony's album came out this year. And he made such a huge viral splash with all the TikToks and shit. I mean, you got to at least put it on the list of potentials. Melissa Carper, Born in Ya. I love that album.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've got that. Yeah, there's a bunch more. Benjamin Todd, his new album's really
yeah.
good. I mean, there's God. I mean, we really are in a high tide, if you will, of great Americana singer-songwriter artists and groups coming out with really good music. And there's just so
Sure.
many out. I mean, like I'm saying, you could take a list of all the albums that came out in 2024, shuffle them, and any 10 are probably going to be worthy of this list.
Agreed.
The Black Keys, Ohio Players, came out this year.
Oh yeah.
They immediately stopped promoting it because they said some record company or whatever screwed them, but I think it's a fucking good album. So, I mean, shoot, there's so many good albums this year. Anyway, so we're going to play more of our favorites as we go to and come back from break. Do stick around, though. When we come back, I want to talk about our artist, group, newcomer, and other standout honors we want to recognize. And we'll do a little Where Are They Now with our Roots Music Rambler guests. Let's go to break with a cut from one of Frank's top albums from 2024. Here's the Secret Sisters with Paperweight from the album Mind, Man, Medicine. This is Roots Music Rambler.
I blow with the wind, I swim with the tide, I go with the grain, I'm along for the ride. But when it comes to you, I can't float away. I'm a love letter, you're my paperweight. I'm a love letter, you're my paperweight. I want you to keep holding me down, building this life in a little town. Trees so tall, roots in the ground. Thankful every day for what I found. I could go anywhere, but I wanna stay. Yeah, I'm a love letter, you're my paperweight.
We wrote our names on a dollar bill down at the dollar bill bar. Our feelings couldn't reach the ceiling, so we hung it right there on the wall. We were spinning round so silly drunk, green was just like rippling leaves. In a forest full of promises, 100,000 broken down dreams. Guys like you are a dime a dozen. You should count your lucky stars. Honey, if I had $1 for every single sailor's heart, I could break 100 down at the dollar bill bar.
Dollar Bill Bar, that's Sierra Ferrell from our album of the year. It was number one on my list. It was number one on Frank's list. And the album is Trail of Flowers by Sierra Ferrell. American Dreamer is the single from the album that got all the attention, but that's my favorite cut from the LP, which is chock full of great songs. We've talked about that already on the show. So far, we've shared our top albums and top songs of 2024. Now we want to take a quick moment to talk about the most outstanding folks for us in 2024. So we're going to each take a stab at Artist of the Year, Group of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, and some other recognition we think is worth mentioning. Now, again, these individual categories, I think, should be based on everything: albums, singles, live performances, virality, people who didn't just show up but shine throughout the year. So, Frank, let's tackle these one at a time. Who do you think is your Artist of the Year, the one person who stood out as having the best year in the Americana space in terms of creativity, quality, exposure, and so on?
So, for everybody out there, Jason and I did not discuss our lists or our picks ahead of time. So the fact that we both chose Trail of Flowers as album of the year, that wasn't planned. Okay. And now I'm kind of thinking, before I give who my Artist of the Year is, I wonder if we chose the same one again.
It's hard not to.
It's hard not to. I know, because my Artist of the Year and based on all the criteria that Jason mentioned, it has to be Sierra Ferrell. And she didn't come out of nowhere. If you've been, paying attention in this genre for a while, you know that she was, on her way before Trail of Flowers came out. Okay. So, and I think the duet that she did with Zach Bryan, Holy Roller, I think that helped out a lot too. And that's one of my favorite songs. But that did not come out in 2024, so I couldn't include it. But anyway, Sierra Farrell, she's just at the top of the heap right now. And, she's nominated for all these awards. And I finally got to see her at Evanston Folk Festival. She played 2 sold out shows in Chicago earlier in the year that I could not make it to, sadly. But I think she's really made a name for herself, and she's gonna be around for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, there's no question she was my artist of the year as well. The only thing that would have given her, or the only artist that would have given her any competition in my mind at all, was Tyler Childers, based on his enormously successful tour and exposure that he, went out and earned the hard way by just playing his ass off and playing a lot of shows in a lot of places. The only thing that really kept him out of contention for this was Rustin' in the Rain came out in 2023. So,
Right.
and we've talked before on this show that it's calendar year for us. We're not going to do this bullshit release date on some other. If it came out in 2023, doesn't count. So if Rustin' in the Rain had come out on January 1st, this would have been a competition for me. But as it wasn't really a competition. I thought Tyler was fantastic all year in becoming bigger than he ever probably dreamt he would. But for the totality of everything, creating new content, creating new music, performing, establishing themselves, Sierra Ferrell, hands down, artist of the year by a long shot, I think. And the only other entity that I think could come into competition with her in this category they're not in this category. That would be a group. I don't think it would be an individual. I think it would be a group.
Okay.
Which will lead us to our next one, right?
Yes. So we'll turn our attention to the group, not an individual. And there are lots of great bands and groups, some that we've already mentioned, the Secret Sisters, the Black Crowes, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. Silverado had a big year. Even Hayes Carl got together with the Band of Heathens to form Hayes and the Heathens. So, Falls, who is your group of the year in 2024?
I mean, again, I don't think there's much competition here. It's got to be Red Clay Strays. Very similar to Sierra Ferrell. They came out with a fantastic album this year. They went from this little band that got mentioned every now and then to completely blowing up. Karen and I think I told this story on the show before, when we went to Railbird in Lexington back in the summer. Unfortunately, the Red Clay Strays had been booked on the smallest of the stages on one of the days. And like an aerial shot made it to Facebook or made it on social media of the Railbird grounds while the Red Clay Strays were playing. And I mean, it looked like Woodstock. Like it was this one big tent where the stage was and just people fanning out from it. And there were other people playing at the same time on other stages, but everybody was watching Red Clay Strays. And they just had one of those years where they exploded. Thank goodness, because their music's fantastic. They deserved every bit of it. But in terms of groups, I think the only other one that I could think of that really had a banner year for themselves and had a lot of interesting storylines along with it was Silverado, because they were Mike and the Moon Pies. They changed their name. They came out with a new album, a new brand, all that good stuff. So it was an exciting year for them, but they didn't have quite the explosion in terms of commercial success that Red Clay Strays did, making all the, nighttime talk shows and all that kind of stuff. So it's Red Clay Strays far and away above. And I think Silverado comes in there maybe with a second place finish.
All right. Excellent. And you know how I know that Red Clay Strays have achieved commercial success? I've mentioned before in my classroom, I make a playlist, a classroom playlist, and I allow the students to write requests, and they put them in a little box, and I go through it because I have to make sure they're school appropriate. And a couple of my students who are more fans of the likes of like Taylor Swift and Morgan Wallen requested songs from Red Clay Strays. So that's how I know that they have achieved commercial success. Okay.
There you go.
Whether you agree with that or not, that was telling to me.
Yeah.
So I guess I have to share now who my group of the year is. Okay. So this is a tough one for me, because, you know, I listen to certain groups a lot, you know, more than others. But they don't necessarily have new material from 2024. So I went with the one, the group that put out new material that I like the best out of, you know, all of them of the year. All right. And that is American Aquarium.
Nice.
So yeah, I gushed about the band and BJ earlier, so I really don't have anything new to add to that. So I'm just going to go with them. I did get to see the band back in October, and it wasn't my no. Yes, that I believe that was my first time seeing the full band. I'd only seen BJ solo a couple of times. So yes, that was my first time seeing the full band, and it was incredible.
Nice. Well, that's one of the ones that I have not seen yet. So I am excited about catching them sometime in 2025 for sure. I've heard a lot of great things about them live, and I've obviously heard a lot of their music, which I really like. And BJ is, you know, as we've said before on this and previous episodes, seems to be just a super nice guy. So they're a band you kind of root for anyway. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. 2024 also saw a lot of newcomers feeding at the trough of Americana music. Some, like the Red Clay Strays, seem to be newcomers, but they've been around making some noise for a few years now. So we're going to base this one on artists who released their first full-length albums in 2024. That gives us a nice, neat qualifier for who could be a newcomer of the year. So Frank, based on that, who were you most impressed with as a newcomer in 2024?
I am going to have to go with John Mook. Again, totally impressed me at Evanston Folk Festival, and his story is impressive too. I mean, he's originally from Uganda, and he went to, you know, British boarding school, now living in Austin, Texas. He's playing on the Kaimo cruise in the spring. The album Flying Away, from top to bottom, is just lovely, and he's another one I would just like to see have all the success.
Cool. I'm glad. I can't disagree with that one. Very good. I've heard 2 or 3 of his songs. I haven't had the chance to do a deep dive yet, but the 2 or 3 songs that I've heard were really good and beautiful songs. And he's one of the handful of artists that kind of makes the new artist rotation on WFPK here in Louisville, which I've mentioned several times on the show. I fill in there from time to time. And when an artist percolates there and I haven't heard of them when they do, it's like, oh, I missed something. Damn it. Like I hate myself for not knowing who they are. And so as soon as I saw his name, I'm like, wait a minute, I got to dig into this guy. Right. So very good. Very good. Very good choice for that one. But good stuff. All right. So my newcomer of the year, I got so excited when we were able to get this young lady on our show. So my newcomer of the year is someone we've interviewed. She's a friend of the show now. I cannot wait to see her live. She's got to get out to the East Coast more. But Kimmy Bitter and her album Old School just stole my attention this year. I loved her album. I loved her approach. I loved her vibe. Everything about her was just super cool. Very throwback to 60s and early 70s country. Even wears the go-go boots and the go-go skirts and stuff. And that's just her vibe. We had her on the show before. We'll make sure there's a link to the episode so you can go back and check that one out. But I just thought Kimmy Bitter, took the Americana space and the country space by storm this year. If she had done so with a record company, she'd be in the same sentence with Sierra Ferrell right now, I think, in a lot of ways. But she kind of did it as an independent artist. So there wasn't a big booking agent booking her shows. She wasn't booked on with a bunch of media and TVs, interviews and stuff like that. I mean, we got her on Roots Music Rambler because I emailed her directly and she responded. So she was so early in her kind of rise and she hit on such a great vibe with old school and the songs that she wrote for that it was just a great year for her. And so I thought, that's definitely deserving of a Newcomer of the Year award in somebody's list, even if it's just mine. So I did want to mention, though, I had a couple of people as asterisks on here. Another friend of the show, Leon Meitzen, hadn't gotten quite the exposure as a Kimmy Bitter or certainly not a Sierra Ferrell, but his singing and songwriting, his songwriting is fantastic. And if you haven't heard his stuff, he's another friend of the show. Go check. He's got a new single out, which we'll update more about it here in a minute when we do our Where Are They Now list. But Leon Meitzen was on my list, and Melissa Carper as well. I really enjoy her Born-Dinya album. I bought it not on a whim. I was like, oh my God, my record store guest room here in Louisville that I go to all the time, they have Melissa Carper. This is great. So I got her and Benjamin Todd, I think, in Amethyst Kia in one fell swoop one day. And I came home and I think I listened to that album 3 times before I put it down. And I just think she's got a unique sound and a unique perspective. And I really like her music. So she was on my short list as well, to mention a few others. So there you go.
Very good. And Kimmy Bitter, didn't she say that she does like all of her own like publicity and branding and marketing? So, she deserves all of the accolades, definitely, because she's working her butt off.
Well, I can imagine if she is working on another album, which I hope she is, and it comes out and it's half as good, really, as old school, it's not going to be long before she ain't doing any of that stuff anymore. She's going to have a record company and a big deal. And, unless she just, holds on to that independent artist kind of vibe, which maybe she will. But if she just gets a booking agent and gets her out in front of more people, I mean, she's going to explode. So she's just so talented, so good.
Well, we hope so. We hope that happens for Kimmy. And so much other talent and promise. I can't wait to see what all of the groups and individuals that we mentioned, what they do in 2025. And you mentioned some special categories here, and I'm not really sure where you were going with that. Okay. So let's, how about you fill us in?
Sure. So I've touched on it a little bit already. I wanted to call out an artist or two that did something in 2024 that either moved the genre of Americana music forward, or maybe bluegrass or whatever their specific genre is, move that genre forward or the category forward, whether they introduced a new sound or a new style into the Americana space, or maybe even expanded the genre's audience by crossing over in or out of the category. And I have 2 people that I think did what I would label as innovate in 2024 musically that I wanted to call out. And the first I mentioned earlier is Billy Strings. His new album, Highway Prayers, is definitely a bluegrass album, but songs like Gild the Lily, which I talked about a little earlier, is so beautiful. He's crossed over into more of a subtle country Americana sound in some of his music, not all of it, but some of it. The album is his best, in my opinion, and I think is strategically centering him to become more Americana sounding a bit, which is only going to expand his audience and perhaps bring a little bit more of the diehard bluegrass fans that love him for the speed with which he often plays, and bring them over into the Americana audience in a more broad way. So it's artists like that who make a little bit of a shift creatively that bring an audience with them into the space that I would call innovators. And I think his new album really kind of sets that out there for him. I think he's doing something different and something that's bigger than just one album and one artist. I think he's bringing people to the category with the way he's evolving. And so I wanted to call him out for that. But the main reason I wanted to do this is, again, to circle back to somebody we mentioned earlier. I think Beyonce deserves far more credit for Cowboy Carter than she's getting. And she deserves far less criticism than she's had to endure for doing it. And as Frank pointed out so astutely earlier, a lot of the criticism is coming from just ignorance and not being open-minded to what country music can be. But I think when you look at what is happening to country music, with certainly Beyonce at the top of the list, but I would even argue that, some of the Shabuzis and some of the other people that are really kind of hip hop artists that are bringing a country sound to hip hop and blending those genres, what they're doing is they're taking country, this defined definition of what country music is, and they're bringing more people to it, making it a much broader definition of what the category is. And that's never bad. It's never bad to bring more people to a genre where they might be listening to Beyonce on a station that plays a nice mix of music, and they have a Beyonce country song, and then they hear a Kimmy Bitter that they would have never heard on other stations that play Beyonce, or they hear a Billy Strings, or they hear a Neil Young, or they hear what, right? So I don't think there's anything bad about an artist exploring their creativity in a way that brings people from one genre to another, from one background to another. It diversifies individuals' tastes in music. It diversifies their ability to see and consume the world in a broader way. And it actually fights against the very thing that is causing all this criticism, the closed-mindedness and the ignorance. And so I think Beyonce deserves a shit ton more credit for doing this album and for withstanding the criticism that she's withstood, because I think 10 years from now, we're going to look back and go, that Cowboy Carter album was big. It was big.
And I earlier shared my thoughts about the situation. And I even talked before, I appreciate Cowboy Carter, but it's not one that I'm going to listen to over and over again. And not because it was done by, a Black R&B or hip hop or pop artist. It has nothing to do with it. It just, some of the songs I really liked, and I even mentioned a couple of specific songs in a previous episode. But it's not something that is going to be in my rotation.
Sure.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Billy Strings too, and how I know that he has kind of the switch that he's done, or the shift. He is appealing to my students. A couple of his songs ended up in my request bin as well. So, that's how I know that some of the artists that we kind of see as not secluded, but sort of separated, from other more, better known names. When I see them starting to kind of move into that space, that's when I feel that they have achieved something greater, right? And so Billy Strings, definitely, I agree with that, and I agree with what you said about Beyonce and Cowboy Carter.
Yeah.
So and other bands have done it, right? Bands and individuals. I mean, take a band like Wilco. We had a whole episode on Does Wilco Suck? And I can't answer yes or no to that,
Right.
because early Wilco was my jam.
Yeah.
But they pivoted, they switched, they expanded, they brought in, and it just didn't speak to me anymore. Does that mean I badmouth them? Does it mean I, speak ill of them? Of course not. But we can appreciate their creativity and their talent and their ability to do something wholly different than what we're used to, or that we were first introduced to.
Absolutely. Early Wilco was much more in line with the Bottle Rockets.
Right.
And in the last few years, Wilco's been more like Fish. They're a little different.
I don't know if it's definitely different. I mean, you talk about early 2000s Wilco, that was all like Pet Sounds, Beach Boys and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely been this.
Yeah, that's okay.
Change.
And we decided, since the impetus for that episode was convincing me they don't suck. We ultimately did decide they don't suck. They're just not as good, or not as hard, appealing as they were originally. They've softened over the years, which if you like soft, great. If you don't, I don't normally like soft, then they're not going to be your jam.
Exactly.
With that, let's go to break with Beyonce's Texas Hold'em, which is an outstanding song, in my opinion. We'll come back with the aforementioned Gilda Lily from Billy Strings. And when we come back, we'll catch up with friends of the program.
That's right. We'll find out where some of our previous guests are in their musical journey now. So stay tuned. This is Roots Music Rambler.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em. So lay your cards down, 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 down. So park your Lexus and throw your keys up. Stick around, round, 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 round. Stick around. And I'll be damned if I can't slow dance with you. Come pour some sugar on me, honey, too. It's a real live boogie and a real live hold down. Don't be a bitch, come take it to the floor now. Woo! There's a tornado in my city. Hit the basement. That shit ain't pretty. Rugged whiskey. We surviving. Of red cup kisses, sweet redemption, passing time, yeah. Ooh, one step to the right. We headed to the dive bar we always thought was nice. To the left, then spin me in the middle, boy. I can't read your mind. This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em. Lay your cards down, down,
tree, I saw a miracle flying high. I tuned into the song that she was singing. The melody was an honest friend, and it felt like I was learning to fly. But I fear I'll never know the feeling. It must be nice to just be heard. It might sound a bit absurd. I'd sing along with the birds. I'd sing along if I only knew the words. I'd sing along with the birds if I only knew the words.
That's Billy Strings and Gilda Lily. That song, as we record this, is tearing up all the various charts in the space. I think you can hear how different it really is from his traditional kind of high velocity picking. And I think that's a good thing for him, the Americana space, as we talked about in our last segment. So for our last segment in our 2024 year in review show, Frank and I are going to do a quick catch up with some of our previous guests to let you know where they are now and how their 2024 went after appearing on the show. So we'll start out. Our first guest ever was J.D. Shelburne, who is much more of a pop country artist, but he was available and willing. And so we had him on the show, and we had a great conversation with him. He has had the #1 CMT video with Cars and Trucks. That was in August. Spent 5 straight weeks on that chart with that video and that song. He does really good music videos, and that keeps him in front of the CMT audience, which keeps him feeding his family. And so he's doing a great job. He's done a lot of fun shows this year, and I keep track of him on Facebook. We message back and forth from time to time. He's a big UK basketball fan, so I see him with a lot of my people that I went to high school with and whatnot on my Facebook feed. But he's doing great. And doing very, very well. What about Cindy Imp, Secret MC Society? What's she up to there, Frank?
Well, she and the band made a big splash at Americana Fest. What was that, in September? August, September. Okay. And the band has a new album out called End of Pretty. So,
Very good.
yeah, happy for her and the band. And then our next friend of the show is Mike Mentz, and he's still on his 21 Roads project, traveling the world, making music. And he was voted in to play the Cayamo Cruise Festival in February and March. The dates overlap, like February, March of 2025, alongside the likes of Jeff Tweedy
Nice.
and Emmylou Harris and John Mook that we've talked about. It seems ad nauseum. But very happy for Mike. And so Mike also has a children's book out that is called How to Fly with Alaska Chai. And it's about this, young boy, about his experience flying in an airplane, seeing the clouds up close. And it's been really welcomed, and he's been really successful with that as well. So I'm very excited for him.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then who's up next? Oh, Jay Gonzalez. Jay is part of one of our favorite bands, Drive By Truckers. So he also, one of his other projects, Gonzalez Smith, they put out a new album, Roll Up a Song. And Jay was still touring with the Truckers. It's that time of year where the band takes a break, and usually Patterson and Cooley will do some solo stuff. So I have no doubt that Jay is working on plenty of other creative endeavors. Yes. And then Ella Salter and the Sunday Sinners, we've talked about her a couple times too in this episode. And she and the band released a new EP called Trailer Trash that came out on November 22nd of 2024. So one of her songs did make my top 10 songs of the year.
Mhm.
And then one of my all-time favorites, Nathan Graham. He's still playing shows. He played a couple at the very end of December, and sadly I couldn't make it. I don't know if he's got any 2025 dates lined up yet, but on December 6th, he did release a new single called I Know, and also a stripped down version of Pride, which was on his album Saint of Second Chances.
Nice. Very good stuff. We're going to skip around a little bit here. I know Pixie and the Party Grass Boys, which we had been from that group back toward the beginning of the show. They have a new self-titled album out now. It's all originals. When we talked to them, they had released an album of all covers, which got me, pretty giddy because I love bluegrass covers of stuff. But now they've got an original album out now. So Pixie and the Party Grass Boys are out there. Ashley Best has a new single out called Deep Down. It came out in April, which was after we had him on the show. He's still out there doing the honky tonks and touring. Sarah Jean Stevens has a new single called Fall that was released on December 6th. It's part of a new EP, which drops on Valentine's Day. And as we were talking to her, she was telling us about it being all recorded at Dialback Sound, which is Matt Patton's studio in Mississippi, the drummer, or not bass player for the, whatever, Drive By Truckers. So in his studio, Digby, which we had on the show, the boys from Digby, they've played a few more shows here in Louisville, and they've hinted around that they're working on even more new music. So after their first album in 17 years, there might be more music coming from Digby. And then S.G. Goodman, who we had on the show back in the spring, is spending her winter touring in Europe with Mr. Jason Isbell in the 400 unit. She's taking a little bit of time off right now, more touring in 2025. And she hinted around with us back in the spring, that a new project would be coming probably in 2025. So we're excited to see what comes of that.
All right, up next, we've got Britt Taylor. So she and husband Adam Chafin have been doing some duet projects while continuing to support Britt's Kentucky Blue and Bluegrass albums. Mm-hmm. And then Cy Khan, he just celebrated, not just, but earlier in 2024, celebrated his 80th birthday. So another former guest, Larry Webster, says that he is trying to organize a tribute album for mountain folk artists.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
That would be fun. Jessie Lynn Madera, she has a new single called Make It Out that was released in November. And Leon Meitzen, who we've mentioned a couple of times too in this episode, he's touring all over, released a couple new songs. He really had a great 2024. And in fact, he and some of his songs have come up in my Facebook music nerd group. People have just discovered him on their own and posted about it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's a friend of the show. So very excited for Leon. He was just so much fun to talk to him. Just seems like a really cool dude.
Yep.
Bree Bagwell. So Bree, she's still doing her OnlyVans podcast and touring. She's playing some shows. And who else? Who's up next, Jason?
So Jackson Pines actually talked to Joe not long ago. New single and album came out December 7th. And Joe tells me he's coming my way in 2025 to do some research at Indiana University up in Bloomington, which is about an hour and a half away. And he's also hoping that they're going to be touring along the way as he comes out to do that. So I'm hoping they're going to be coming to Louisville and I'll be able to hang out with them a little bit. But we traded some messages a couple of weeks ago on the Instagram when the new album and single came out. So Jackson Pines has new stuff out there. I've actually played a couple of their tunes on FPK over the last few months. We're filling in for various folks there. And they seem to get a great reception. Good, folk rock music. So they've got a new album. Go check that out. Kaya Cater has a Canadian tour. I think she's playing 1 or 2 shows in New York State and then doing Canada in the early part of 2025. Her album, Strange Medicine, made several top album lists in the bluegrass and Americana space for 2024. We were fortunate enough to talk to her right as that album came out. Atomic Junction is doing some more touring and promoting Peacedale, their album that Aaron Perlett came by to talk about. And we've already talked a lot about Kimmy Bitter in this episode because Old School made a lot of top 2024 album lists. And certainly she was my newcomer of the year.
That brings us to Brandon Good. So Brandon, I keep up with Brandon because he's local and he's been playing lots of shows locally. In fact, he just played a show right after Christmas with Sarah Jean Stevens and the Hoyle Brothers. Sadly, I couldn't make it, but I know he's keeping busy with another project called The Singer and the Song. That's a local project here in Chicago where various songwriters and bands play. It's like a showcase sort of thing, and the performers are given like a topic or a prompt ahead of time. I don't know the length of time, and they are asked to write a new song based on that topic or prompt and then perform it at the showcase. So Brandon is involved with that, and then he's also playing lead guitar with another singer-songwriter that is, I don't know that he's originally from Chicago. I don't think so, but his name is Tommy Goodroad. And I've seen him play a couple times and I really enjoy his stuff too. And he may originally be from Wisconsin or Minnesota, or I'm making that up. But I did see Tommy open one time for Cactus Blossoms. So, he's another one we might want to keep an eye on. So that brings us to Griffin William Sherry. So he had some big New Year's Eve shows back home in Maine, and he's got some New England dates in early 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And then George Dukas, he is playing in Houston on January 4th.
Yeah, so he's continuing to tour and support his album Long Way Home, which I will put on the brag button a little bit here, and he sent me an autographed copy of that. I was pretty happy to get that.
Oh, nice.
Got a little signed copy. So I had to buy another one because I'm not going to play the signed copy. I'm going to frame that. But anyway. And then just a real quick update, Dave Adkins, who was on a few weeks ago, a few episodes back with us, he actually played the Pikeville, Kentucky Bicentennial Annual Gala last weekend as we record this. It was just before Christmas. And I went because my mother, Sarah George, shout out to Mom, was one of the instrumental people in planning my hometown's bicentennial celebration all year in 2024. Pikeville turned 200 And that gala was kind of the year-end celebration of the whole thing. And Dave Adkins, who is from Pike County, and as I told you on that episode, I first saw him play on a Hillbilly Days parade float in front of my house. But Dave actually opened, him and his band, Mountain Soul, opened up that and served as the musical entertainment for the pre-dinner, music at that event. So I got to see Dave, meet him in person, which I'd met him before, but not in the context of, hey, he's a big bluegrass music star now, and I get to catch up with him. And literally, I'm sitting there talking to Dave at this event, and my mom comes up, and he turns to my mom and said, hey, I want to write some songs about F.E. Waller-Smith and all these other people, the historical people about Pikeville that you talked about and all this stuff. So Dave's just constantly thinking about new stuff to come up with. And so it was really cool to see him play live. And I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity, if you're a bluegrass fan and you see Dave Adkins on the bill somewhere, go check him out. Nicest guy you'll ever meet. And very cool. Fun to watch him play live. So good stuff. That's where most of our guests, we didn't check off everybody. Some people are taking some time over the holidays. They're not really active. A few people I looked up and they don't have tours or dates scheduled for 2025 yet, which a lot of people will be coming out with that stuff the first week of January or so. But some good stuff out there. We've had some good guests on the show since we started, and hopefully we got a lot more in store for you here in 2025.
For
Frank,
sure.
Any parting words here as we wrap up 2024 and get ready for the new year?
No, I'm just looking forward to catching up with some old favorites in the new year and discovering even more new music and new to me artists. So, yeah. Oh, we mentioned Sarah Jean Stevens got a new EP coming out. She's got an album release party or EP release party on Valentine's Day, which is going to be a big to-do at Fitzgerald's. And Riley Downs and the Acid Cowboys are going to be part of that. And gosh, who else? I can't remember. I know I'm leaving somebody out, but I very much looking forward to that and new stuff from Sarah Jean. And we're going to see Patterson Hood a couple of times in 2025. Excellent. So yeah. So I'm just looking forward to new music and new adventures.
Fun times. Well, I am also looking forward to it. I've made a promise and a pledge. I will not see 125 or whatever acts this year. I'm going to reel that in a little bit, but I am super excited that one of the first shows I'm seeing in 2025 is probably going to be happening about the time this episode drops on January 20th, which is just a couple of days after my birthday, here in Louisville. Joy Aladacoon, she's coming to play for me for my birthday. It's how I've decided to frame that. She doesn't know who the fuck I am, but she's coming and she's playing my birthday week. So I'm saying she's coming for me. There you go. So Joy Aladacoon here in Louisville on the 20th. I'm also going to see her at the Ryman in March. So
that's right.
As well as a lot of other. I'm seeing Bonnie Raitt this year and all sorts of so. But I am going to reel it in. I'm not going to go crazy. I might buy a lot more records though, because my budget will shift, obviously. So anyway, 2025 is going to be just as much fun as 2024 was, and we are glad that you are along for the ride with us here on Roots Music Rambler. That'll do it for our 2024 year in review episode. There's no picking the grinning segment because we just recommended a couple hundred artists and songs to you. So go celebrate 2024 by listening or re-listening to all that great music. And before we dive headfirst into 2025, allow Frank and me to say this. We have had so much fun bringing you this show. We hope you enjoy it and continue to support the show by sharing it with your friends, posting a review for the show on your favorite podcast app, and following and engaging with us on our social media channels. We couldn't do this show we could do this show without you, but it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. So thank you for joining us each episode on our journey as we explore the art and artists in the roots Americana, alt country, bluegrass, blues, and more. Here's to more great shows and interviews in 2025.
Absolutely. I echo everything that Jason said. Thank you.
Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls & Partners, copyright 2025 now. Editing and technical production by Resonate Recordings. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hold Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.